Buddy.
Hey, everybody, we are live once again. Thank you for joining myself, Anthony McCurry, and Dr. Ronald Primas. We're doing a very special show, a little bit different. We're doing, because Doctor is so busy, we couldn't get him for our normal 12 o'clock show. Again, I'm Glenn Hausman, Dr. Ronald Primas. Great to see you. Anthony, why don't you take it away, sir?
You know what's interesting? All these times that we're doing the show together, you still can't get my name right. That's amazing.
What did I do?
I say
call you Anthony Melchiori like everybody else does?
No, Doctor, thank you so much for coming back. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure and honor to have you. What I'd like you to do is I'd like you to bring us through kind of when we first spoke, and we actually were in your office, which was like 6-7 weeks ago, kind of what it was like on the front lines the first 2 weeks, and then what is it like now? And again, just for people to remind people is I call you the hotel doctor because you go to hotels, you take care of patients, and you also have your own practice here in New York City. But you've really been on the front lines, and your number one priority was to try to keep people out of the hospital. So one, the frontline doctors in emergency rooms could have that better for someone else, and two, to get your clients better as quickly as possible so they don't have to go to the hospital. So just talk through that experience.
All right. So thanks for the props. I appreciate it. Anyway, so in the beginning, when we first met, even though I took it serious, I didn't know how serious this was going to get. And clearly it kind of took off in an exponential fashion. I did probably see patients who've had this for probably even up to 2 months before, it was identified as a virus that was causing havoc. There was a lot of patients that coming to my office that I know had an influenza-like illness. That we call it influenza-like illness in medical practice. When you suspect that someone has the flu and they have the same symptoms of it. And I tested some of these patients and they tested negative, so much to the point where I had told my staff that, look, I think there's a problem with this particular lot. So maybe we should speak to the manufacturer. So truth be told, I was probably seeing COVID for about a month or maybe even 2 months prior to it, to 2 months prior to us meeting. Since that time, everything had been shut down. There's a lot of patients that were really, really sick that I did house calls for. About 60% of the people that I tested came back positive because they did have a fair amount of worried well that were calling that thought they had symptoms, and I tested them and they were all negative. But I kept, thankfully, a majority of my patients out of the hospital by starting really early and aggressive treatment.
So right now, everybody's trying to get the economy going back. That's what you hear. You constantly. Let's get the economy going. But there's real danger, especially for the hotel folks, of how do we do that? This morning, I read an article in a local paper here in New York City that said, go ahead and read it. Read the top. Read
New York Daily News, coronavirus slams NYC hotel workers, 43 dead, 503 hospitalized, 90% unemployed.
I mean, that's serious. So how do we go back to getting employees safe? Like, what's the protocol? I know you're not a hospitality expert, but you are a doctor, and you kind of are a hospitality expert. Like, what are the procedures to keep our employees safe?
So, the same things that everybody's talking about in the media, what the CDC recommends is keeping 6 feet apart from each other. I know that the Centers for Disease Control does not advocate wearing masks unless you're a non-essential worker. I think that they work. And if you're going to be in a setting where you're going to be in contact with quite a few other people, I think masks and gloves or frequent hand washing should be at least your starting point and your baseline. And again, going from my previous experience when I was treating all these patients with influenza-like illness for months before, I've been wearing a mask and I've been wearing gloves every time I examined someone who I thought had influenza. And I've been checking myself routinely for COVID and I'm negative. So just the fact that I'm in direct contact with all these patients, and just the fact that I'm in direct contact and just simply wearing only a mask and gloves and washing my hands after I saw the patient, I dodged the bullet, right? So I think if you stick with the basics, that's fine. I still think that there are things you can do in the hotel kind of to engineer the place so that you minimize the risk to both employees and to guests. Again, mostly with those guidelines in place, signage showing, frequent, constant reminders all over the place, mostly like in creative language, funny things, because people get that message all the time. And if you can get your creative team to make creative messages reminding people to like have safe distancing and to wash your hands.
So when you go to a hotel, and the say X hotel says this is how we sanitize the room. We touch all these spaces. Maybe we go in with an electrostatic gun and we hose everything down. And now we've secured the room for your safety. I mean, is that the extreme that we're going to? Is that what makes you feel safe, or is it just enough to make sure the housekeepers just with whether it be Lysol or some other disinfectant just touch every area in the hotel? Like, what is the standard? And I know that you're being asked that from the hotel community in New York City.
Truth be told, the virus pretty much gets killed by a lot of different things. That it doesn't have to be hospital grade disinfectant, but I think because of the nature of the industry that we're in, I think a hospital grade disinfectant might be a valuable thing to have, just to give that extra measure of protection and, possibly give, just extra peace of mind to the guests that are staying there, showing, hey, we go beyond using disinfectant wipes. We use X like Hibiclens or, some really high powered disinfectant that will literally kill anything. But truth be told, if you're on a tight budget, most cleaning agents will eliminate the virus from most surfaces.
That's good. But I think it's only not just the fact that most cleaning agents do it, but it's about creating a sense of confidence for the people that are going to be coming into the hotel, and even more critically for the people working within the hotel itself, right? So what measures do you think you could really take to adequately communicate to your hotel staff, the people that you visit all the time, that they are going to be safe working in this environment and they shouldn't be frightened?
So, again, you should not let any employee come back to work who's ill, right? So that's number one, and just give everybody a sense that, you're following the standard protocol of keeping everybody safe from each other. Same thing that we tell the public. You don't want an employee coming back who, for example, is living with a relative who tested positive, right? So it's important to kind of do, verbal screening with employees all the time and say, hey, number one, just to find out how they're feeling. Number two, to find out what their environment at home is, what mode of transportation did they take coming to and from work, and what their potential risk is. But again, going back to, if you stick to the basic guidelines of the basic hygienic principles, even if people were exposed, you're going to minimize the risk both to your staff and to the guests that are staying in the hotel. I mean, look, a lot of hotels now are asking me to do these pre-opening consultations and so on, which I've been doing.
Right.
And
there's a hotel calling for you right now.
Sorry?
So there's a hotel calling for you right now.
Exactly. But the thing is that you can go crazy thinking of every single, I had to think of everything, right? So, I was even saying that, when it comes to people riding in the house car, you have to make sure the house car, just complete minutia. But the stuff all helps. The more things that you have in place, the more peace of mind that you would give guests and employees that it's safe to go back to traveling again, staying in hotels again, and so on.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I'm sorry, go ahead.
And to Anthony's point, I listened earlier today at noon to what you're talking about. And one thing that, in my consultations I had was like, whenever possible, have a hands-free environment, right? So you want to have automatic door openers. You want to have just anything that's automatic that will allow somebody to not have contact with an inanimate object that potentially could be harboring the virus, that can live on some surfaces up to 5 days.
One serious surface. How do you handle elevators?
Well, just Clorox wipes.
Like constantly. Do you, like, every time somebody comes and like says, "Oh, I got my room, I'm gonna go upstairs," ding, now somebody's got to rush up behind and clean it off? That doesn't seem practical. So I get nervous about that.
Well, one thing you can do is actually just keep a box of disinfectant wipes in the elevator itself and have the guests just do it. Right?
Beautiful. That's a great idea. Right.
And if I had a bigger hotel, what I would do is I would close the elevators except for one or two, put people in it, and have the people with the mask and gloves touch the buttons. That's what I would do, because you can't trust that everyone's going to do the right thing.
They reuse those gloves.
What's that?
You know, the thing is that you don't know how many times the patient or the guest using the gloves would have reused those gloves. So
no, but I'm saying there's one person in the elevator, an employee that stands there and he's touching it, and then every couple of times, whatever, he changes gloves, or but he doesn't touch anything but that button. So there's many different ways to do it. But I think what you're saying is, signage, messaging is really, really important. How do people feel like 2 weeks or 6 weeks ago in New York City, and now like the guests that you're seeing, are they feeling a little bit like, okay, this is going to be okay? Is there less panic? What is New York feeling? Because I haven't been in the city in 7 weeks.
Since we saw you.
Right.
There's definitely less panic. I personally am seeing less cases now than before. So the cases I'm seeing now are mostly patients that think they may have had it a couple of weeks ago and then want antibody testing. But as of the last 3 days, I've seen no new cases or no new suspected cases of coronavirus or any upper respiratory illness for that matter.
And how important is getting to testing? I just saw something where the CEO of Hilton was sitting next to the President of the United States, and the President of the United States says, we don't need to do that more testing. It's not about testing. And then, or something like that. I don't want to misquote him, so you can go and look at the clip. But then the CEO of Hilton said his guests are asking for testing. Like, people want to know that my employees are safe. We need to test people. Or again, go and look at. Did you see it, Glenn?
No, I did not see that, but we do need to test people. And that is a fundamental failing of what's going on right now, is we don't have these tests available. We're getting people here wondering whether or not they have the antibodies, and they could be of help, and all of this kind of stuff. So Dr. Primas, maybe you could bring a little clarity to what's going on, so our emotions don't take us down the wrong path.
So it's complicated, right? So number one, all the tests that are out to market right now, none of them have FDA approval. They all have, under the Emergency Use Act, they all have emergency procedures so that you can test people with some measure of reliability. So I can tell you, just from my own experience, out of all the patients I tested on the kits that I have, they correlate pretty well. So the patients that I've had who tested positive are all testing positive for IgG. Well, let me backtrack. So IgM is the protein that your body produces to help fight off the virus in the initial stages, right? IgG, I'm sure you've heard these terms before. IgG is the protein that your body makes as it's recuperating and you're in that recuperation phase. So there's some overlap between the two. So what I've been doing is, in someone who has no symptoms and they want to find out what's going on, I'll go ahead and I'll do the finger stick. If they have IgM and IgG, I'll then suggest the nasal swab. So anybody who has an IgM, which is the initial phase of this reactant, coming up positive, I will suggest a nasal swab just to see if they're having active shedding from the nasal passages, which means in theory, they could be spreading it to other people. If they have just plain IgG, that means that they probably are immune and could probably go back into society and have no issues at all. And I think that's where the game changer is going to be. The more patients that you have with what we call herd immunity, I'm sure you've heard that term.
Of course.
The more people with herd immunity that are walking around and positive IgG, the more those people can help bring society back, right? They can go back to work, they can go to the store. Number one, they don't have to worry about getting reinfected, although there's some debate about that. In general, if you look historically at other viruses, in general, once you have IgG to that particular virus, you are probably not going to get infected with that particular virus again.
And just so people are clear, you're not just a regular doctor. You're an infectious disease specialist. You're a travel
medicine. I'm an internist. And my subspecialty is travel medicine and tropical diseases. So it's an offshoot of infectious disease. Yeah. So I've been dealing with the whole SARS epidemic and multi-drug resistant TB. So anytime one of these things pop up, I usually I'm working with people who
Right.
uh,
So
have this.
we've established that testing is necessary and that it's a great idea for us to find out who's had it and who hasn't, so those that have had can get back into society. And I think we could all agree, especially for the hotel industry, the more people we could get out and about living normal lives, the better we're going to be. Now, Bob,
but how do you? But real quick. But how do you get tested? Like, say I want to go back to work, but like I was talking to someone the other day, and they said to their doctor that the person is being tested every week because they have the resources to be tested every week, and he doesn't want to be he doesn't want to go back to work until it's 100% negative, even though he doesn't show the symptoms. So what do I do as a regular person that wants to get tested, and I can't find the test? Like, what do I do?
I think most places are starting to have the test available now. The only thing is, again, you can't say with 100% certainty what the validity of the test is. I know that the tests that I have are like 70 to 80% sensitive. I'm ordering a new crop of tests that are supposed to be coming in next week that are like 98, 99% sensitive. But that is not a simple finger stick. I need to draw the blood, it's a regular blood draw, and I use that blood, and I'll tell in a few minutes whether someone has or not. It's a lot more sensitive and specific than a test we have now, but it's a lot more complicated. Most patients would rather have their finger prick rather than get a full-on blood draw. But if it's a trade-off, right? You want to increase your yield with that particular test, and so I'm switching to that particular test starting next week. But yeah, I think there are plenty of tests that are going to be available soon. They're ramping up production.
Right. All right. So hopefully those tests will be available more en masse shortly. Check your local jurisdictions because the availability is different everywhere. On Facebook, on LinkedIn, everybody's saying, hey, maybe elevator attendants are going to make a comeback. That's an interesting thing to ponder. But before we start getting some more of the questions, and Anthony, I know we've got a couple queued up we want to address. One issue I'm curious about as I heard this new phrase this last week, contact tracing. What exactly does it mean? Could you explain that to us, and whether or not you feel, as a specialist in this field, is this something that we should be having a conversation about and pursuing?
So, I mean, I think it's an innovative approach. They've used it in Singapore and they've used it in a couple of other cities.
Can you explain it?
So what happens is anybody who tested positive voluntarily puts online that they've had it, and then anybody who's near them, if they have let's say you have an app, you put on your app that you have it or you have symptoms of it, and those around you will know whether or not they're passing by you, if they possibly were exposed or not. Again, this is not Singapore. Singapore is a lot more draconian society than we have. And we have a lot more freedoms than they do there. And I think, yes, it's voluntary, and yes, ultimately it will help society, but there are privacy issues that are going to be involved with it. But I guess once people log on to that particular app, privacy goes out the window, right?
Yeah, I mean, we're talking a whole sea change in potential privacy. The other issue that I'm concerned about is this whole notion of taking people's temperatures. I'm seeing that the major parks are looking at doing something like this. This could be something that could spill over. I'm thinking, I don't know how to feel about that. I had very strong feelings about things after 9/11, for example, that I got accustomed to. And but is this temperature thing, does it make sense? Because we all kind of run at a little different body temperature. I don't know. You tell us, sir.
So I think there's a good way. So one way to do it would be to have a thermal camera just check every single person who walks in. Oh, this way it's non-invasive. You're not intruding on anybody. Well, you're kind of intruding on someone's privacy, but the only time you pull someone out of line to get their temperature checked, like they do in some airports, would be like if you get that red alert, right?
Right.
So a more benign way of doing it, rather than pointing a gun at someone's head every time they check into your hotel, or every time an employee walks into their employee entrance, like a more non-invasive way would be to do the thermal scan first as the first line of defense, and then if they activate the system, then you pull them to the side, and then you check their temperature, and then you take it from there. So yeah, I think that's a good way of at least having a first line of defense. against having someone come into your hotel with a potential infection. It's not foolproof because, you know, you are going to have asymptomatic carriers that are coming in as well. But
I think I think at this point we realize like nothing's foolproof, right? And everybody from a commercial standpoint, you have to do everything you can to protect people that are coming in and your employees, and then we have to take personal responsibility for our own health because it's everybody we talk to, and especially you, that really I take seriously because you're an expert. It just doesn't seem there's any foolproof way to make sure that you keep everybody 100% safe.
You're right. I mean, but you want to get it as close to that as possible.
Sure.
And again, like there are a lot of ways that we can do to ensure that.
All right. So moving on, Bob Jordan says, hey, Hilton will be announcing a program for all brands. If you didn't catch our show 2 days ago, that's 28th of April, be sure to check either our LinkedIn pages, our respective Facebook pages, our No Vacancy page, novacancynews.com, and our channels on YouTube, because we had Phil Cordell, who was in charge of creating this program. So we learned all about what they are up to and how
if that's the Bob
changes.
If that's the Bob Jordan I started my career with back in the day at the Embassy Suites, I don't know. I wouldn't believe half the word he says. Just kidding. Hey, Bob, how are you?
All right, and I am looking for the other one. And let's go for this one. Suggestions on hotels and any organizations using ozone machines for sterilizing air, surfaces, etc.
So in the studies that I've looked at, UV seems to be better than ozone. Ozone, you know, helps as well, but the UV light seems to work a bit more effectively.
Right, but doctor, I heard the UV light has to be very, very specific frequency type of a thing. It's not any UV light; it's a very specific type of UV light.
You have to buy or make an investment in you know, the standardized ones that will kill most things with DNA. So, for example, I have an item called phone soap, and every day after I return from work, first thing I do when I get in my garage, is I put that phone in that UV sterilizer and I sterilize both sides of my phone. A few years ago, when this was first becoming emerging technology, I had one of the manufacturers come to my office because they needed a template doctor's office, and they had a wand. And they went over my surfaces. They took a bacterial swab first. They sent it to the lab. You know, they labeled it like number 1, and then they went and they used the wand over my desk. They came back an hour later. They checked it, and sure enough, you know, even an hour later, there was some bacteria growing because they'll still reproduce rapidly, but dramatic, like 98% reduction in bacterial count after 1 hour.
But then you have to make sure that if the employee's cleaning the room, you have to make sure that employee's cleaning every single surface.
Right. Well, I mean, and then, you know, the other thing is the ozone, you know, if used not the right way, you know, ozone can be potentially toxic to the lungs, right? In large doses, you know, ozone therapy. So, so you have to be careful of that. Ozone still will work, but I think UV is a bit more effective, less intrusive. The only potential drawback with using the UV light is that you have to protect your eyes from, you know, potential UV rays getting in there and causing some retinal damage.
Right. Makes sense. We got a question on one of our LinkedIn feeds. How likely would your clothes be a carrier? This hotelier is enforcing a mandatory uniform standard, change room at hotel, wash all uniforms there, shoes swapped as well. I guess looking to keep everything in that property. That's an interesting idea.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. Look, after I come home, I go ahead and in my garage, I take all my stuff up, I leave it in the garage, and I go up and I shower and I change. So leaving it in one place in case there is viral particles on it I think that's a really good thing to do for sure. Because it's unknown how long it can live on cloth. I mean, you know, again, it's anywhere from a few hours to up to 5 days on certain surfaces, depending on the fabric, depending on you know, what the surface area is. So, for example, the more rough a surface is, the more surface area there is, the more viral particles can stay in that particular substance.
Right. Makes a lot of sense. Anthony?
Yeah, it like I said, it just seems like a common sense approach, and nothing is too over the top as far as I'm concerned. Whether it be making employees change their uniforms, their shoes, using an elevator attendant, making sure the front desk is wearing masks, making sure you're using hospital grade disinfectant. I think those are the things that everyone's got to write down, have a stand, and everyone's got to follow those. I mean, there doesn't seem any easy way around it. The one thing about our society is everybody's looking for an easy out, and I don't think there is an easy out.
No, you're exactly right. And, this is going to be with us for a while, unfortunately. So this is going to be the new normal.
Do you really? Well, talk about that, because that's a big statement. What does that mean?
So, until everybody in the population around the planet, not just in the United States, has herd immunity or gets vaccinated, we're all going to have to worry about it. I mean, it is a potentially lethal disease, right? There are people that are dying of it. Yes, the case fatality rate is quite low, but, it is a fatal disease, and you want to kind of protect people. And again, those are the only two ways that you're going to get full protection. Look, this is all going to be hindsight in a couple of years when we look back, and we're probably doing all the wrong things and whatever, but this is going to be, the vaccine is probably going to take another year and a half to develop. At that point, even if it's developed, you're going to have a lot of people that hesitate to take it. But until you literally immunize the entire world's population, this is going to be a new normal. So it's going to be, I'd say, probably like 3+ years before things turn back to the way they used to be. Although, like Glenn said, to Glenn's point, getting back to post 9/11, there are just certain things that you're going to have to get used to. It becomes a new normal.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So this is Anthony, go. You take it.
Do you think there'll be a surge in October? Everybody's saying there's going to be a surge. What do you think?
That's a great question.
So I don't know if there'll be a surge, but certainly during the flu season, you're going to end up getting mixed messages where you'll have people with influenza-like illness that are going to present. And then you're not going to know, does that person have the flu? Does that person have COVID? So the first piece of advice I can give to any person working in any industry, especially the hotel industry, is make sure your entire staff is immunized for the flu, because that'll, at least, it's not foolproof, and the flu vaccine protects anywhere from 10% to 70% in a good year, but that eliminates a lot of questions. So first rule of thumb is just make sure that all of your staff is immunized for the flu, to kind of get that kind of out of the way. But I think that if people don't keep up the same type of measures that we have now, we may see a resurgence come October, November. I'm hoping that that's not the case, but theoretically, unless people just let their guard down completely, it can. If people let their guard down completely, it can happen.
Well, there's definitely a specific segment of the population that is going to do that, as there will be probably the same percent of the population that's going to be incredibly overly cautious, right? And then a bunch of us in the middle, because I think that's just human nature. Now, one interesting thing here was a little flip on your question. If you receive the flu shot, are you more likely to get this virus? I suppose referring to COVID-19, or less likely, or is it moot? Doesn't matter even.
It doesn't matter. All it's going to do is eliminate one possible reason why you would have fever and chills.
Right.
And kind of keep that down. And again, flu vaccine is not foolproof, right? It's not 100%.
Well, the flu vaccine is based on what their best guess is for the particular strain they think is going to be most prevalent, correct?
Right.
Right.
And sometimes it's a hit, sometimes it's not. But again, even in a good year, it protects you maximally like 70%. So there's still a 30% chance you can still get an influenza.
Right. So let me ask you a question. 3 months from now, everything's open. Airlines are going. Again, maybe some people are wearing masks, some people aren't. Maybe some restaurants, some cities are open, some aren't. You are going on vacation or no?
That's a tough question. I'd like to, but I got to see how this all plays out. even before this all happened, whenever I travel, I have an N95 mask. And the only time I'll put it on, of course, is if someone within my proximity is coughing or has a upper respiratory infection. But I always travel with an N95 for decades. I've been doing it. And my family too, we all bring masks with us. And, you always get that person that's next to you sitting next to you on the flight that's just starting to cough or sneeze and doesn't do anything.
So have you ever done that? Have you ever put the mask on with somebody coughing next to you?
Yeah, I had a guy one time, I was flying in from LA, and the guy was sick, and I wore it the whole time, and it was just so uncomfortable wearing a mask for that long.
But did he say anything to you?
No, I didn't make any conversation at all. But, I brought the Purell with me, and, now what I'm going to do is probably in addition to the Purell and the mask, I'm going to probably bring gloves with me on the flight. Another thing what you can do to protect yourself if you are flying or when you're going to start flying again is whenever you book your seat, don't book your seat near a bathroom, because there's been studies done showing that the closer that the seat is in proximity to wherever the bathroom is, the higher the rate of all infections, right? Not just diarrheal infections, but respiratory and so on. Wow. And as you know, that coronavirus is not just in the respiratory tract; it's in the gastrointestinal tract as well. And some people's only symptoms with this is actually upset stomach, nausea, and diarrhea. And, those people can potentially be, not cleaning themselves the right way and touching the door handle and touching your seat on the way back to their seat. So you want to try and sit, no matter what class you're sitting in, try and book your seat as remote from a bathroom as you can.
I know a lot of friends that have been doing takeout since the beginning. I've done takeout once, and that was yesterday, and it was under very extreme procedures. I picked up the food, I sterilized everything, I did everything on my porch, put them on trays, put it in the oven for 350 for 5 minutes, and then we ate it. But that was the first time in 6 weeks we had takeout, and we usually have takeout twice a week. I mean, can you digest this? What's the safe way to do takeout?
So the thing is, there's been studies showing that, the stomach acid does kill almost, all of the virus if you happen to ingest it. That's why, there's some studies showing that take a sip of water like every 20 minutes or hot water, and that'll, if you have anything in your oropharynx, you can wash it down to your stomach where the acid will take care of it. People have to be concerned, I know there's a new study now showing that the antacid, I think Pepsid, may somehow protect against having the virus or to help cure the virus. But on the same token, by doing that and you're lowering the pH of your stomach, you're allowing organisms that normally would be killed by the virus, killed by the acid, to pass into your small intestine and then into your bloodstream. So, bottom line is that it's a fine line, but you want to make sure you have at least some acid in your stomach to kill off any pathogen that's entering it.
So are you eating takeout?
Sometimes. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So it made everybody feel better.
When I take it in, when I have takeout, same thing. I accept the bag with gloves. I leave all my bags in my garage. I bring the trays into my house. I then put everything into dishes. I throw away the trays and I reheat everything up. So, I follow the standard protocol with that. You can go crazy with this, right? And look, at the end of the day, when this all plays out, in hindsight, we're going to say, oh my God, what were we thinking? What were we doing? The same thing happened, not to date myself, but, I was in medical school when HIV didn't even have a name yet. We didn't even find the virus yet. All we knew is I was working the intensive care unit, and they were bringing all these young men in that were just dying for no reason. And we didn't know how it was spread. We didn't know if it was bloodborne, respiratory. We used to go in literally hazmated to every single HIV room that we went to back in those days. And now we look back and we're like, what were we thinking? And the same thing is going to be with this. We're still right now in the dark ages. Every day there's new stuff coming out, new data, new information that, still has to be deciphered and filtered through and data crunched and, made a syndrome out of, at least we're kind of ahead of the curve because we had SARS and MERS as templates for this, but this is still emerging. And,
All right. So taking that a step further, we got a question here that, thanks for asking this one, John. I was thinking about this myself. What are your thoughts on masks, gloves, and Purell to constantly stave off the virus? And what does that do to your immune system? Because we were thinking about how people have been using Purell so much that maybe it's making people sicker. I think about how I used to play in the dirt in the sandbox when I was a kid, but you know, kids don't do that sort of thing anymore. So where do you stand with Purell, immunity, and long-term harm or benefits?
So the thing is that, you know, I think we touched on this just personally, that, you know, I'm into the whole paleo movement, like the whole ancestral health movement. And yes, I believe in playing in dirt, get your hands, but when you're younger, right?
Right.
So you can develop a really robust immune system moving forward. However, you know, using antibacterial hand soap to prevent you from getting this virus is imperative, especially because we don't have a handle on it yet. We don't have a really good treatment for it. We don't have a really good vaccine for it yet. So you want to be as diligent as possible. And no, you cannot just by washing your hands with, you know, antibacterial soap or Purelling down,
right,
you will not alter your immune system. The thing that I don't suggest is using antibacterial soap to take a complete bath with. I think just on your hands is fine. There's tons of studies now showing that you just using regular soap on your body is healthier to allow your normal skin flora to flourish compared to antibacterial total body soap. But
well, Glenn doesn't use soap, so we're good.
Sorry? Right.
He's making fun of me.
Glenn doesn't use soap.
I swore to only, he's not really being completely honest. Once a decade, I take out the ivory bar and I do a complete scrub down. So, you know, we got that. All right. Now we've got one person here who's talking about supply issues. You obviously can't handle this, but I did want to address this to Jody. What about that? You can't get hand sanitizer or spray disinfectant. What are they supposed to do? I think that's a supply issue that will work itself out. That's the thing with law and supply and demand. There's a lot of people shifting towards the production of these things, and there will be plenty, I think, in the future. Would you agree with that, Doctor, or am I completely off base with that?
No, I mean, I think as the supply chain starts to ramp up, you know, it will definitely improve. But there are things that you can do in the meantime, you know, if you're running low.
Great, let's hear it.
Like, for example, colloidal silver. Like, so for example, I'm down to my last N95 mask, to be honest, and I'm spraying it down with colloidal silver, which the military uses to, you know, kill viruses. With regards to hand wash and vegetable wash, you can use just water and vinegar. Vinegar is enough to, you know, it's acetic acid that will help kill the virus. So there are certain things that you can do to, if you don't have enough protective devices, that you can kind of change using common household things to, you know,
right.
So.
All right. So I'm thinking now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, all of these chemicals and stuff like that are being used. Is that something that we should be concerned about? And maybe out of all these chemical products, are there any more organic type of things that could be used instead that might prevent that 10-year problem that I'm thinking about?
Well, I mean, you know, citric acid, there are citric acid washes that you can use that are natural. And again, like I said, the virus, it is weak and can be destroyed by many, many different things. And it does not live on surfaces for weeks on end. You know, it's a couple of days.
Well, I'm not worried about that. I'm worried in 10 years from now, everyone's going to be using so many freaking chemical products that I'm going to get some sort of cancers from it.
You know, that's a possibility, right?
Yeah.
And in fact, you know, I read one study showing that, you know, whatever environmental toxins that you take in, like heavy metals and so on, it's virtually impossible to get them fully out of your system.
So just another cost of being alive, really. I mean, right?
Well, you know what, Doc? I truly appreciate you. I truly appreciate you being on again. I mean, this has really taught us a lot. I really, really appreciate it. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
That's okay.
No,
anyway,
I didn't mean to cut you off.
I'm just glad that Anthony interrupted you instead of me getting in trouble for interrupting him. It's a lot cleaner that way.
You know, again, you know, to your point, you know, you don't know what in 10 years will happen. But again, are now living well past our 80s, and we're not dying in our 30s like we're supposed to, right? So we're falsely kind of lengthening our time on this planet to begin with. And over that time, you accumulate all this debris in your system and leads to problems down the road. Whether it's poor diet, food intake of, toxins that are in your foods or in your water supply. Ultimately an accumulation of that debris in your system over time will cause, genetic changes that can cause your tissues to start growing abnormally.
Well, now you're making me rethink my decision to have fried chicken for dinner tonight. This is not going in the direction that I had hoped it was.
Actually, not to make light of it, but to that point, the majority of the people who are succumbing to this virus are people who don't take care of themselves, who are overweight, hypertensive, diabetic,
right,
all of which are modern diseases. And of course, the more robust your health is in the first place, the more you'll be able to kind of prevent and fight this virus off.
Right.
So, and in fact, in all the patients that I saw that tested positive, patients that I have that are the healthiest, had negligible symptoms.
And that was older. Those were older patients.
Older and younger, both. But my older patients,
makes sense.
Older patients that were in good shape.
Yeah, of course.
Before we let you go, somebody says we're dying in our 30s like we're supposed to. What do you mean by that? They made a joke of it, but basically, if you didn't have
little
medicine,
life expectancy humor.
Right. If you didn't have medicine, you didn't have technology. Right.
So meaning that from an evolutionary perspective, right? You are supposed to reproduce when you're 15, 16, contrary to what society says. You're supposed to be able to rear that child till that child becomes 15 or 16, which brings you to about 30, 40, or as many kids as you can in that particular, age range. And at that point, you just theoretically, we're hardwired to not be able to repair our DNA after age 30.
Right.
You have a little bit of a cushion until age 40, but our DNA is hardwired to not take up the resources of the generation coming after you. And so the reason why you see people getting cancers and heart disease and all these things after age 40 is because we no longer have the robust DNA repair mechanisms that we had prior to that.
Right.
So everything that we have now based on sanitation that's allowing us to account for not having DNA to repair itself will extend our lives to age 60 or 70.
Right.
And now beyond that, having a good lifestyle to cause what we call epigenetic changes to allow you to live even longer than that, works best. But in theory, every day that you have past age 30 is kind of like a milestone theoretically.
Right. And Anthony.
Doc, if you can send us a test, I want to take it, and I want him to take it after what you just said, and I bet you I get an A and he gets a B.
Yeah. Well, I probably that I was pretty much a B- student my whole life, so I wouldn't be surprised about that one. But I did want to add that, oddly enough, well, not oddly, because our eating habits suck and the way that we live our lives is not optimal. Life expectancy has actually dropped for the first time in the last couple of years in, I don't know, the last 100+ years or so. And if you just look at our life expectancy by the numbers, in North America, our life expectancies increased well over 10 years in the last 60, 70 years. But places that were less developed, like Africa, since 1950 alone, have gone from that 30-something to well over 60, 70 years old. So you're absolutely right. When we move forward in society and we have better medicine, we have better technology, we have better nutrition, all of these types of things, it makes a big difference. But yeah, we're all slowly dying after our 30s, right?
Well, there are newer technologies and newer medications or off-label use of current medications that are currently in the pipeline to, extend our life even further, or to have at least a healthier health span. So there are a lot of aging studies going on using metformin, which is a diabetic drug now, which has been shown to increase lifespan in humans and lab rats. So, for example, diabetics on metformin have lower rates of cancer, heart disease, and other illnesses compared to even like you or I.
Wow. Wow. Anthony, any way you want, any final thoughts before we wrap this thing up?
Yeah? I want to get out of science class and go to lunch.
Yeah, I haven't had lunch yet either.
but Doc, listen, we've been friends for what, 25 years. I appreciate you coming on. We'll ask you to come on again. I know you and I will work together on getting some kind of protocols and helping the hotels here in New York City. That number was staggering to me, that the employees in New York City hotels, are getting sick and dying, 43. So we need to make sure that we take it seriously. But on the other hand, we do need to get going. I mean, the economy needs to go, and because we don't want to wind up in a depression. But we got to be safe about it. We got to be secure, and we got to do it the right way.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword, right? You want to send people back to work, but you want to send them back to work safely. And that's the key. And again, until there's a vaccine and until there's better treatments, then absolutely we need to follow all these standard protocols that have squashed the curve so far. And as long as all of us adhere to those measures and come up with creative ways in the hotel industry to kind of prevent transmission of this, then it'll bring us back sooner than we think.
Let me ask you one question, in your opinion, because I know you have college-age children. You think they're going back to college in September?
Right now, both of my kids' colleges and medical schools said yes. But I had one of my patients who just got notification last week. I forgot what school it was. I think it was Yale or some big name school that is not offering classes again until spring of 2021, and they just got the notice. So,
wow.
Again, it's an evolving process, right? So they originally said we were going to have all these millions of people dying, and now it's squashed down to like 60,000. So as this disease evolves and we get a better handle on it, then things are going to change. Things change every day. Like I get news feeds every day from the American College of Physicians, from the State Department of Health, from the CDC, and every day there's just a massive new information all the time. Not just statistics, but on potential treatment regimens. Like now, remdesivir is getting approved. They don't know if they're going to use it for prevention. They don't know if they're going to use it for outpatient. Right now, it's only cited in clinical studies to use inpatient. But every day, this is evolving. So, and if I say something now, then it may change in a month from now, or even 2 weeks from now. This is like literally just. It's evolving, and we're still in the dark ages right now.
Right.
But there's light at the end of the tunnel.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, this is really a good place to end this show. Dr. Primas, we will see you again really soon. Thank you so much for giving us your time. Wow. I mean, Anthony, that was really an educational and informative show, and quite a day doing these two shows back to back like this.
I think you did the Irish goodbye to Dr. Primas. You're like, bye.
No, he's still back. He's still back there. Don't worry. He's still hanging out backstage, right, so we can say our official goodbyes. I got to tell you, though, honestly, it is so weird the way that we let people go. I always feel like we haven't said goodbye, thank you, and all of that kind of stuff enough. But it would be weird if we did that, I think, for the audience, Yes.
Yeah, I agree. And listen, we're going to have him on as often as we need to, as often as he'd like to. And hopefully this helped. We did a special show today because I know there's a lot of questions. I know I had a lot of questions. So my brother, tomorrow, 12 o'clock, what are we doing?
Feel Good Friday. We're going to start by feeling good by getting us back to clean. But the good folks over at Syntox, we're going to be seeing that great new gun that we've been talking about all week. You'll get to see it, understand it, how it works, watch it in action. And then we're going to be talking to a couple of folks about mindfulness and therapy that you could be able to get, and all the tips to stay positive as this crisis continues to wear down all of our souls. I know I've been feeling a little bit low energy today in particular. I could use a little bit of rejuvenation, so we'll see what they have to say. So we'll be here tomorrow noon, right? And I think we're going to be drinking too. Yes, at the end of the show, we're going to definitely make some cocktails as well, or a cocktail, or maybe we'll just drink straight out of the bottle. I don't know, Anthony. We'll find out tomorrow. Be right here, 12 Eastern Daylight Savings Time. All right? All right. See you all tomorrow. Bye-bye.
See you tomorrow, brother.